Into a developing story now. Each year, more than 11 million visitors drive in and out of Las Vegas on the I-15.
But for years, the travelers have gotten stuck in that infamous bumper-to-bumper traffic at the state line. Fox News' Maddie White joining us in studio. And so, Maddie, some wheels are in motion to change this bottleneck to the relief of so many people.
I know. After years of calls for changes on this traffic, finally we're seeing something. So on the Nevada side of the state line, there are 3 lanes, but on the California side, it goes down to 2, historically causing that bottleneck. But good news for anyone looking to drive between California and Las Vegas for Thanksgiving weekend. Caltrans has completed work on a 1-mile transition lane heading south on I-15 on the California side of the state line.
Repaving, restriping, and using that shoulder as a 3rd lane during peak hours.
California Governor Gavin Newsom promised relief at the Nevada state line last December. Now, almost a year later, we're seeing the completion of Caltrans' first phase of that project. For 1 mile, the shoulder's been converted to a part-time lane.
To begin immediate relief.
Caltrans says it will be open for use as a lane during peak congestion, primarily on Sundays and Mondays, heading from Nevada to California. Las Vegas leaders and tourism stakeholders previously told Fox 5 they're happy something's being done after so many years of inaction.
I am so thrilled that the governors have gotten together to finally take a look and begin to address something.
It gives us an opportunity to start a real conversation with California. Having a pilot program, having something that is a trial, allows us to engage with each other and look at, is this working? Might other things work?
But for now, only a 1-mile stretch has been widened south of state line. Newsom promised the interstate will be widened for 5 miles. Caltrans told us Monday the project will rehabilitate 5 miles of pavement. When we followed up with more questions on that second phase, they said the details of that are still being determined. Back in December, Newsom did respond to questions about a permanent 3rd lane.
The longer-term strategy of making a 3rd lane permanent or providing more relief, we have to work with our partners, including CHP.
So will this make a difference? Questions we are continuing to follow. Also, what about those other miles they promised to make improvements on? We will continue asking Caltrans about the timing of that second phase and the details of it as well. They say it's TBD. The clarity on that timeline is expected in the coming months. We'll keep on asking. Reporting live, I'm Maddie White, Fox 5 News, local Las Vegas.